Now I want to explain Einstein's theory of general relativity, which is also an incredible tour de force, unbelievable, but one, again, that he did not get a Nobel Prize for. Maybe someday they're going to correct that. We all live in a three-dimensional space, right? You know, if you have a little mathematics, you have an x-axis, a y, and a z. That's 3 dimensions. And if you want to, what's the shortest distance between 2 points, right? It's going to be the straight line between them. What Albert Einstein discovered through his theory of general relativity, which I need to tell you requires a lot of advanced mathematics to understand, including linear algebra. And don't think like, oh, I took algebra in elementary school. No. This is algebra in n-dimensional space, using matrices where the dimensions of space in one direction is one dimension space, the other direction, another dimension space, and it's very complex mathematics. But what Albert Einstein showed is that we live not in the 3 dimensions of space, but 4 dimensions of space and time. Time is going along with it. And you look at the 4-dimensional space-time, which you would think is flat. So the shortest distance between 2 points is the straight line between them. But when you have objects of mass, like anything, I don't care, it could be a pen, it could be the earth, it could be the sun, with the objects of mass actually bends the space-time around it. And the result is that the shortest distance between 2 points is the straight line that goes over the bend and curves between one point and the other, because space and time are bent by massive objects. Now, the gravitational attraction of smaller objects is so slight that we really have trouble detecting that. You certainly can't detect it unless you be far in outer space where there are no other gravitational effects around. But when you talk about the Earth, the entire Earth acts like a big mass, the entire mass of the Earth coming from one point right in the center, and that exerts a lot of gravitational force upon us. Interestingly, Einstein's theory of general relativity, with all the complex mathematics involved and many physicists who didn't believe it was true, was proven when physicists went, or astronomers went to Africa, where there was going to be a total solar eclipse. So you can't look into the sun, right? It's too bright. But if you have the moon exactly in front of the sun, it blocks enough that our instruments could look at the sun. Now, if this is the sun, and you're going to look at, I'm going to take up my battery again, and the battery is, let's say the battery is a star that through the rotation of the movement of the sun and the stars, when the battery goes behind the star, you can no longer see it. But Einstein predicted that since this 4-dimensional space-time is bent around massive objects, as you see this battery go behind the sun, there's a point at which you know the battery is totally behind the sun. You know that you can't see it, but you will be able to, because the rays of light hitting this battery and coming back to you are going out in this direction, but they're bending around the sun back to us on Earth. And it took years later until this actual phenomenon was shown. It's an incredible discovery, an incredible event and effort and creation of the human mind. And these are some of the reasons why Albert Einstein is held in such incredible regard. But the point that I want you to keep in mind, once we go to talk about UFOs, is that space-time can be bent. Around physical objects, space-time gets bent. And that's what I'm going to speak about when I do some speculation, which I don't know is true, but trying to give some explanations as to how travel across the universe could happen. Now we're going to go into dark matter. So we know from general relativity that masses bend space-time. So now astronomers looking out into the far reaches of our universe, they look at light coming from a star far away, and that light is going off at an angle and coming back to us. So you know that there's a mass of stars that are causing that 4-dimensional space-time to get bent. And you know how much mass, by Einstein's equations, how much mass has to be there. Well, when scientists calculate the mass of all those stars, the mass and also energy, it's only 5% of what's needed to bend light like that. So that's where scientists now realize there's something called dark matter. There is matter out there. Physical matter, we would say, because it gives off a gravitational distortion of the 4-dimensional space-time. So it has to be there, but you can put your hand through it. You can see through it. And they call it dark matter. It's matter, it's physical matter you know is there, but it's dark and we can't seem to interact with it. We don't know why. This is the forefront of physics and people come up with theories, but we just don't know what that dark matter is about. By the way, not to get religious on you, but once again, 95% of the matter and energy of the universe is there and we can't even interact with it. Okay, I'm not going to draw any conclusions for you, but remember that about dark matter. It's there, it's exerting gravitational force because it's distorting the four-dimensional space-time, but we can't see any matter there. That's dark matter. We're going to come back to that principle also later. Lastly, we're going to talk about elementary particle physics. This is before we get into the UFOs. So elementary particle physics is crashing particles into each other at extremely high speeds and then seeing what particles come out from them. So scientists have accelerators, particle accelerators that are in circles, and I mean a big circle. I told you about the linear accelerator at Stanford where they shoot particles at extremely high speeds down a straight accelerator, 2-mile long building with a tube inside. When a particle with an electrical charge moves this way, it's called the right-hand rule, it creates a magnetic field around it. If the current flows this way, magnetic field that way. That's how, for example, you see how electrical magnets work. That's what's used in MRI machines to create the magnet. So physicists have now particle accelerators in huge rings. One of them, the most recent one, was built in 2010 for a cost of $9 billion. It's called the Large Hadron Collider. It's on the border. Part of it's in France, part of it's in Switzerland, and the distance around the ring is 17 miles, and it is exactly straight, the entire 17 miles. And because as the particle is traveling, the charged particle is traveling, and it creates a magnetic field around it. There are huge electrical magnets all the way around this tube, around the entire 17-mile path. And you can send particles going in opposite directions, in opposite tubes, and get them up very close to the speed of light. And then you direct them, bang, to crash into each other. And off of that comes all kinds of interesting, weird, and bizarre particles. If you've heard of quarks, which are particles even smaller than electrons, well, electrons are part of quarks, but protons and neutrons that are inside atoms, those quarks were discovered by having these particles, neutrons, protons, electrons, crashing into each other, and then seeing what comes off using instruments. So the point I want you to know about that is that there are physical particles with really bizarre natures to them, and ones that wouldn't make a whole lot of sense if you thought about it, but this is what we see, physicists see experimentally. And I'm going to show you just some pictures now of the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland. It's just amazing. It's a feat of human engineering to see what human beings have been able to do in creating a phenomenal machine like this. So among these bizarre particles, there's the one particle that I want to mention right now called a neutrino. A neutrino was actually discovered from radioactivity, not from the particle accelerators. But a neutrino is a particle that was thought to travel at the speed of light and is thought, therefore, to have no mass to it, because nothing can travel at the speed of light and have mass. Remember I told you that by Einstein's theory of special relativity, as something travels close to the speed of light, time slows down for it, distances lengthen, but the mass of it also goes up. So you might think, well, it's just a matter of putting enough energy into that particle to make it go fast enough and it'll go past the speed of light. The more energy you put in when you get close to the speed of light, the particle gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And the more you try to push it faster, it just gets heavier and heavier. And you can't make it go faster than the speed of light. So neutrino has always been thought of, since it was discovered maybe 50 years, maybe 60 years ago, 70 years ago, was thought of to be a particle that has no mass to it, but it travels at the speed of light. Now, given updates to the elementary particle physics, to the standard model, it's believed that a neutrino actually has a mass to it, but the mass is so small that we can't measure it. And because there's a mass, it can't go the speed of light, so it's thought to go so close to the speed of light that we can't measure how much slower than the speed of light that it's going, because it's really right on the verge of the speed of light. That's what the current physics theory is regarding neutrinos. But what I want to explain to you about a neutrino is a property of neutrinos. So it has a mass to it. It's a real mass particle, right? But neutrinos can go back and forth through the entire Earth 100 times and never hit anything, right? I mean, do you think I can take that battery and push it through my hand, have it come out on the other side and not hit anything? Of course not. But neutrinos can go through the Earth back and forth 100 times and not hit anything. They have this property of avoidance of interaction with other mass in the universe. As a matter of fact, for every square centimeter on the Earth's surface, every second, there are 65 billion neutrinos going through every square centimeter every second on the Earth. That is, and you would think, well, you should be burning up from it, right? You should be incinerated in an instant. They just go through your bodies and they just don't hit anything and they keep going. So what I want you to know is there's a possibility of having a mass, physical mass, that can go through other physical mass and not interact. Now we're ready to talk about UFOs. UFO stands for Unidentified Flying Object. In the United States military, they're called UAPs, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena. Now, let's be clear on something. Unidentified means we don't know what they are. They're unidentified. Anything flying that we can't figure out the identity to, that's a UFO. That doesn't mean it's an alien. It doesn't mean it's coming from another planet. That's a UFO. It's an unidentified flying object. Now, for the last 70 years, 80 years, UFOs have really been the dominion of kooks. There have been a lot of crazy people involved. You know, they've been abducted by an alien and the aliens are talking to them, and there's been tons of photos of UFOs, of flying saucers, and clearly many of them have just been doctored. They've just been, artificially created. They're not real. Maybe some are. You don't know which are real and which aren't. So it's something that most of us, myself included, I never paid any attention to, right? Because it's just a bunch of crazies. You don't know the validity of anything that they're saying. People making up stuff, just forget it, right? Well, something changed. There are two videos that are supposedly taken by Air Force pilots flying fighter jets. And these videos from the cockpit view are supposedly of UFOs. And these UFOs have characteristics that are beyond anything humanity could ever dream of. So when I first saw those videos, I thought, okay, who knows what that is? That could also have been made up. But the United States military, the Pentagon, has now publicly stated that these videos are authentic. They really came from fighter pilots in United States fighter jets in the air and locking on to these targets. These are legitimate videos. That doesn't say they're aliens from another planet, but the videos are legitimate. Now, I want you to understand who are Navy pilots and Air Force pilots. These are people who are flying airplanes that generally cost between $50 million and $150 million each. It costs $30,000 per hour to fly an F-15 jet. These people are the cream of the cream of the crop. Not only are they completely physically capable, but they are tested inside and out to make sure that mentally they're stable, they're normal, they're grounded, they're highly intelligent, they're not having bizarre things happening in their minds. These are mentally and physically healthy people. And these fighter pilots have now come forward. There's four of them that I know of. They've now come forward and said that these videos are real. So we're now going to take a look at the videos that were released by the Pentagon. You can see them on the Navy's website, and that's where these two videos come from.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude. That's not our LNS though, is it? It's not. That is the LNS, dude. Well, if there's like... Look at that thing! It's rotating. Nickel 6-1 Tango Logic, over. Oh, got it! Woohoo! Roger, there's troubleshooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow, look at it fly!
In the $2 trillion COVID relief package passed in the middle of last year, there was a paragraph put in there, and you should know when legislation is passed, all kinds of stuff totally unrelated to that legislation gets added into the bill. But there's a paragraph in there for the COVID relief bill that gives the United States military 6 months to release all of the information that the United States military has about UFOs. That 6 months is coming up on June 25th. Now, the Biden administration has announced that they might be late in coming up with that report, but that report is coming. The report for the American public is going to be the complete report, but you can have pages redacted. There'll be pages there, and it'll just be blank. So you know there's stuff there, but they won't let you see it. But the Senate Intelligence Committee, according to this bill, requires by law that the Senate Intelligence Committee be given the full unredacted information. So what do these fighter pilots say? They say that these UFOs that they've been seeing happened on a daily occurrence every day for the 3 years that they were flying. These UFOs now have also been seen on the radar, which was again leaked to the media. You know, the radar, the flat-looking screen which shows all objects, showing a swarm of UFOs swarming around one of our naval ships. The two ships in particular have been the USS Nimitz and the USS Princeton. These are fighter ships for the United States military. This is real. This is not something made up. And the Pentagon has now acknowledged publicly, formally, that radar shot showing a swarm of them is true. The Navy pilots, who are now speaking publicly about it, said, there's only 4 of them, they said this is a daily occurrence, and they've never come out talking about it earlier because they have an obligation to secrecy. They have a confidentiality, secrecy clearances with the United States government. And they've been afraid, now that they've retired, they've been afraid that they're going to lose their pensions if they speak out. But because these videos leaked to the press, and because the Pentagon has now acknowledged these videos are true, they've had the guts to come forward. And they're stating these were daily occurrences and that they frequently occurred in swarms. And the videos show, and the fighters pilots will tell you, the UFOs come in 3 forms. They come as saucers, flying saucers. They come as what they call Tic Tacs. If you know the Tic Tac candy, it's an oblong shape and not the size of a Tic Tac. I mean, these are ships. The other one is as an inverted pyramid. In other words, a triangular pyramid with the point of the pyramid down. Also, Harry Reid, who was a United States Senator for many, many years, and he was the head of the senators in the Senate when the Democrats had the majority in the Senate when he was there. He authorized $22 million for the Pentagon to study all of these sightings because the Pentagon has just been burying the information as it came in. Nobody knew what to do with it all these years. So the Pentagon developed a committee to look at this. The most recent head of the Pentagon's committee is a guy named Lou Alessandro, and he quit from the Pentagon, the U.S. military, because he was so frustrated that the truth wasn't coming out. And the guy that worked for the British military, heading up the British military's UFO program, also Nick Pope, he also quit and he's speaking out. And if you see these people speak, they speak very cautiously. They're not making up about green men and Swiss cheese coming. You know, they speak authoritatively. They speak carefully, and they say we don't know what these are. But you need to know some of the characteristics of these UFOs. Number 1, the fastest that any United States, any fighter jet can go that's doing the fighting is around 2,000 to 2,500 miles per hour. We are able to create fighter jets, drones, that can go 5,000 miles per hour. These things go 45,000 miles per hour. Numbers that we can't even talk about. The other thing is these UFOs have no exhaust. We don't understand how they're traveling. There's no exhaust. There's nothing coming out of the back of them. So if these things are traveling in a way that we simply don't understand. Furthermore, these UFOs can descend in 1 second. They can go from outer space to right above sea level and stop on a dime. and hover there. We don't know of anything like this. This is not a human experience. Another thing is, these UFOs don't seem to interact with physical media. In other words, they can shoot through the air, and they go at way beyond the sound barrier, but they don't make a sonic boom. They can go from outer space into the water and then come out again. One went to outer space into the water, and the United States Navy saw that. They sent submarines there, and there was nothing there. Any human vehicle that would go that fast, zoom into the water, would break up into thousands of pieces, and you'd have a wreckage. They sent the submarines there, they can't find anything. So these vehicles seem to travel through physical media with no interaction with that media. That's going to be very critical to the very end, at the very end of this discussion. The last characteristic that I want to explain to you about these UFOs is the G-force. If you've seen videos of astronauts in outer space floating around, that's because they're too far away from the Earth for the Earth to pull them onto the side of the ship that's closest to the Earth. But we on Earth are experiencing G-force. That's the force of gravity pulling us down. So the force of gravity on the surface of the Earth is called 1G. And you know that if you've driven in your car and you accelerate real fast, it pushes you back, or you go to make a turn and you feel a pull to the side, one side or the other, or you've been in an amusement park and you feel what you're feeling is the act of acceleration causing a force on you. So we measure that in terms of the number of G's, how many times the force that gravity exerts at the surface of the Earth, how many G's of that, how many times that is the force. So in fighter jets, our pilots or any human being is able to withstand, without dying, at most 8 to 9 G's. And the amount of G's that our aircraft, the fighter jets, can sustain before their wings rip off is 18 to 19 G's. By just observing these UFOs, seeing how quickly they descend from outer space to right above the level of the surface of the sea, and they just stop instantly. And other things they do, they're traveling along at high speeds. They make a 90-degree turn. We can calculate, and this has been revealed by Lou Elizondo, that they are pulling 300 to 600 G's. So human beings can withstand 8 to 9 G's. Our aircraft can withstand 18 to 19 G's, and these UFOs are pulling 300 to 600 G's. There is simply no way that this is human technology. Furthermore, when you see the jets, the fighter jets, lock on to the target, what that is, that's how they fire missiles. As they're flying through the air on their heads-up display, they have all kinds of sensors that will lock onto a target to fire a missile at. And they're locking onto these targets. And they're measuring the speeds that they're going and the direction. Something? Nah. Okay, so you know they're locking onto something. And these pilots, as you heard in the videos, they're screaming, whoa, what is that? These fighter pilots, that's what they live for, to be flying in the air. They're all about other objects. And they're seeing things now that are recorded, as you say, and confirmed by the Pentagon, that they've never seen before and are nowhere near the scope of the reality of which they deal with, on Earth, I should say. Now, John Ratcliffe, what are you looking at? Is there something? Sorry, I thought I saw something.